Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? The room felt like it was pulsing with noise, a low constant murmur of overlapping voices, of pens scratching against notepads, of fingers tapping impatiently against the edge of metal chairs. At the far end, a large screen glowed with topographic maps, ridgelines, and shifting grids of coordinates. The projector hummed, casting its pale light over faces hardened by years of missions and shadows of war. But no one looked at her. She sat with her shoulders squared, hands clasped tightly together under the table, her nails digging into her palms. Each time someone barked an opinion, slammed a hand against the table, or pointed toward the glowing red circles on the map, she felt smaller. Not because she lacked the knowledge, not because she didn't understand, but because they never asked. She wasn't there to them. The man at the front, tall, stiff, his voice like gravel, was outlining insertion points. We land here 400. Ridge line is narrow. Winds are brutal, but it's the cleanest way in. From there we move east no more than 2 clicks an hour. Murmurs of agreement rose. She kept her eyes on the screen. The ridges looked jagged, broken, almost violent. It wasn't just topography to her. It was memory. She blinked, and for half a second she saw her father's face laid over the terrain. A man with broad shoulders, a soft laugh, and hands always smelling faintly of motor oil. The man who never came home from that same patch of earth. To them this was a mission. To her it was a graveyard. She swallowed hard, but no sound came. The projector buzzed louder. The men kept arguing. Drop here, not there, too exposed. We'll need a fire team on overwatch. Route in, route out, no mistakes. Their voices grew sharp, like knives scraping metal. She sat in silence, pressing her lips together, because what could she say? That she knew this land better than any of them. That she'd memorized its scars from the stories her father once told. That she carried him into this room with her, in her chest, in every beat of her heart. She stayed silent. Not yet. The briefing ended in a shuffle of boots and the squeal of metal chairs. Papers gathered, radios clicked, orders carried like weights. No one turned to her. Except one. The sergeant. His uniform was older, faded, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms like carved stone. His eyes were tired, not from lack of sleep, but from carrying too much. He lingered as the others filed out. You ready for this? His voice was low, gravelly, not a challenge. Her throat tightened. She wanted to tell him she wasn't sure, that she hadn't been ready since the day she lost her father, but instead she gave a single nod. It was all she could manage. His stare held her for a second longer than comfort allowed. Then he gave a faint grunt, almost a nod of his own, before walking out. The room emptied. She sat for a moment longer, staring at the ridgeline on the screen, the blinking red dot, the ghost it carried. Her hand rose to her chest, fingertips brushing over the chain tucked beneath her uniform. A small silver tag, her father's, the only piece of him that ever came home. She closed her eyes. In the silence she heard his voice again, the letter he had sent her years ago, his last. Never let them tell you war is numbers. It's carried in the heart of one. Sometimes one is enough. Her chest ached. She stood. She wouldn't be late for Wheels Up. The air outside was damp, thick with the smell of jet fuel and cold iron. A row of aircraft loomed against the dark horizon, their engines already humming. Shadows of men moved up the ramps, packs slung heavy, rifles clutched like lifelines. She adjusted her own straps. The pack bit into her shoulders. It was heavier than it should have been, not just with gear, but with memory. Her boots clanged against the metal ramp as she boarded. Inside the fuselage, soldiers sat in 2 rows facing each other, helmets in laps, chewing gum to mask nerves. Laughter echoed, forced, too sharp, trying to cut through the weight pressing on their chests. She didn't join. She slid into the seat nearest the door, close to the roar of the blades. She preferred it. The noise drowned thought. but the sergeant noticed her silence. He leaned toward the man beside him, a kid with freckles and nervous eyes. "You see her?" The kid glanced. "Yeah, she's quiet." "She's the only one not pretending," the sergeant said. The boy frowned. "Pretending what?" "That this isn't going to hurt." The words hung in the air like smoke. She pretended not to hear, eyes locked on the horizon through the open door. But her stomach twisted, because he was right. The ramp lifted, the aircraft shuddered. The ground dropped away beneath them, swallowed by darkness. Engines howled. Air whipped through the cabin. The roar filled her ears, her chest, her bones. She clenched her hands against her knees and thought of her father again. The folded flag, the silence of a funeral where words meant nothing, the heavy, final weight of loss. She pressed her eyes shut and saw the words again. "It's carried in the heart of one." Her hand brushed the chain under her uniform. She wanted to grip it until it cut her skin. Time dissolved in the roar. Minutes became hours or seconds. No one spoke much. A few tried, their voices brittle against the noise, but conversations died quickly. Fear has its own gravity, and it pulls men into themselves. The sergeant broke the silence once, shouting over the turbines. "Remember Ridge Line, no noise, no light. We move like ghosts." His eyes flicked toward her. "Keep your head." She gave no answer. The red light above the ramp flickered. Warning, they were close. Her heart thudded. She swallowed hard, but the air caught in her throat. The light went green. The ramp dropped. Cold air slammed into them like a wave sharp with pine, wet with mountain mist. The darkness outside felt alive, pressing, watching. One by one they moved. Boots hit soil. The aircraft lifted away, swallowed by the night sky, leaving them alone. The forest closed around them. Branches creaked. Leaves whispered against their gear. Every step felt louder than it should have. She trailed at the rear, her eyes darting across ridges and gullies. Shadows shifted. Rocks glimmered faintly under the pale sweep of moonlight. Her father's voice whispered in her memory, describing these lands. "It's never the gun you hear, it's the silence before it." Her pulse quickened. Hours passed in silence, broken only by boots crunching dirt and shallow breaths. The moon slipped behind clouds. The valley grew darker. And then she heard it. A sound too soft, too human. Not her team, not them. Her body froze, every nerve sparking alive. She crouched low, eyes fixed ahead. There near the rocks, a breath, a presence. Her hand slid to her rifle. She didn't call out, didn't dare. The others kept moving, unaware. She raised her scope, aligned, breath steady, and saw it. The faint glimmer of metal, the shape of a boy crouched, weapon in trembling hands. His face flashed pale in the moonlight. He was young, too young, terrified. Her finger tightened on the trigger, but she hesitated. The silence stretched, unbearable. What if she fired? What if she did? Behind her, boots crunched. The sergeant's whisper cut sharp. "Take it now." Her throat closed. The boy shifted, his weapon tilted. Instinct snapped. The shot cracked through the night like thunder, echoed against the ridges. Birds exploded from trees in a frenzy of wings. The boy fell. The others surged forward, shouts muffled by adrenaline. She lowered her rifle. Her hands were steady, too steady. But inside, everything was breaking. The sergeant caught her gaze, nodded once, a soldier's approval. She turned away, unable to hold his eyes. Because what no one knew, not yet, was that this mission wasn't about a map or coordinates or numbers. It was about a name she carried like a wound. And tonight, in this valley of ghosts, she meant to find it. What made her hesitate, even after pulling the trigger? The boy's body lay crumpled near the rocks, motionless except for the faint shifting of dust around him. The team moved quickly, rifles up, scanning arcs, securing ground. To them it was routine. Contact neutralized, threat removed, move forward. But she didn't move at first. Her eyes stayed fixed on the boy, on the awkward way his arm bent beneath him, on the rifle half slipping from his fingers. He couldn't have been more than 17. A crack ran through her chest. "Move," the sergeant hissed. His tone wasn't cruel, just necessary. Her boots finally shifted, crunching against gravel. She forced herself forward, but her gaze lingered, stealing one last glance. The boy's eyes were open, wide, glassy, not angry, not fierce, just afraid. She wanted to close them, but there was no time. The forest pressed tighter as they moved deeper into the valley. Shadows stretched like claws across their path. The silence after the gunshot felt heavier than the shot itself, as if the whole mountain had turned to listen. She adjusted her rifle against her chest, but her mind wouldn't let go. He was just a boy. And wasn't her father's killer once someone's boy too? Her breath hitched. She shook her head, forcing the thought down, locking it in the dark where it couldn't paralyze her. The sergeant's voice carried back in a low murmur. Eyes sharp, this is their ground, we're just visitors. Visitors in a graveyard, she thought. Hours passed. The terrain grew steeper, rocks jutting like jagged teeth from the earth. The team's steps grew slower, more careful. Every sound mattered. Even the brush of fabric against a branch felt dangerous. The younger soldier, the freckled one from the aircraft, stumbled slightly, his boots sliding on loose gravel. He caught himself, breath ragged. "You all right?" the sergeant whispered. The boy nodded quickly. "Yeah, just tired." The sergeant's hand landed briefly on his shoulder. A gesture human, fleeting, but enough to steady the boy. She saw it and felt something stir in her chest. These moments were rare, cracks in the armor where the humanity still lived. Her thoughts wandered, back to her father, to the last time she'd seen him. He'd crouched to tie her shoelaces, smiling faintly, saying, "One day you'll do this better than me." She had laughed, a child's laugh, not knowing it would be the last time. Now, years later, she was here on the same soil that had taken him. And for what? Revenge? Closure? Redemption? She wasn't sure. All she knew was that she carried him in every step. The sergeant raised a fist. The team froze. A sound drifted through the trees. Low, repetitive, a metallic click. Voices followed, distant but clear enough to know they weren't alone. The team crouched low, rifles up. She pressed her cheek against the stock, scope searching through branches and shadows. Shapes moved ahead. 3, maybe 4. The faint orange glow of a cigarette tip flickered in the dark. Her breath slowed. She could hear her pulse in her ears. The sergeant whispered, "We hold, wait them out." They stayed frozen. Minutes felt like hours. The enemy voices drifted closer, laughter carried on the cold air. Her trigger finger tingled. She steadied her breathing, remembering the boy in the rocks. The cigarette glow passed, the voices faded, silence returned. The sergeant gave the signal, "Move." They rose, shadows among shadows. Her steps were careful, deliberate, but inside, her thoughts churned. Every encounter was a reminder, each face, each sound, that the line between numbers and people was razor-thin. The mission wasn't even halfway. The valley stretched endless ahead. And yet, she couldn't shake the weight of the name in her chest. Her father's name. The one she hadn't spoken aloud in months. Not to them, not to anyone. Because this mission wasn't theirs, it was hers. Dawn began to break, a pale light spilling over the ridges. The trees shifted color from black silhouettes to sharp outlines, every branch etched against the rising sky. Birds stirred, their calls hesitant. The team huddled in a shallow depression, packs off, catching breaths. Steam rose from their mouths in the cold morning air. She sat slightly apart, pulling a canteen from her pack. The water tasted metallic, bitter, but it was enough. The freckled boy glanced at her. His voice was low, almost nervous. You didn't flinch." She looked at him, confused. "Back there," he clarified. "The shot, Most first-timers, they flinch, but you didn't. Her stomach tightened. She wanted to say it wasn't her first, that she'd been carrying ghosts long before this valley, but she stayed silent. He shifted, awkward. I don't know if I can do it, if it comes down to it, pull the trigger. His words cracked, like glass under weight. He was young, unscarred by the reality he was walking into. She thought of reassuring him, of saying it would be fine, but lies felt crueler than silence. So instead, she said softly, "Don't think of the shot, think of why." He frowned. "Why?" "Because that's what stays with you," she whispered. Her eyes dropped to the dirt, tracing patterns in the soil with her boot. The boy didn't answer. But the sergeant, who had been sitting nearby, watching quietly, finally spoke. "She's right." His voice was rough but not unkind. "If you don't know your why, you're already lost." The boy swallowed hard. His gaze dropped. Silence settled again, heavy, stretching between them. She drank another sip from her canteen, but her throat remained dry, because she knew her why, and it terrified her. The march resumed. The sun climbed higher, burning mist off the valley floor. Heat pressed against their backs, sweat cutting lines through the dust on their faces. Every step forward felt heavier. Her mind drifted again, unbidden, to her father's funeral. The silence of uniforms lined in rows. The way her mother's shoulders had curled inward, as if trying to fold around the pain. The priest's words blurred, empty, but the weight of the flag in her hands that she remembered. That weight had never left. She carried it even now. The sergeant called a halt. The map came out, coordinates checked. They were close. The red dot. Her chest tightened. She knew what lay ahead. And she hadn't told them, not yet. Because how could she explain that she wasn't chasing a target? She was chasing a ghost. Why did the valley feel like it was watching them? The ridgelines rose sharp against the afternoon sky, jagged like old scars. Wind scraped across the rocks, carrying dust, carrying whispers. Every step felt heavier, as if unseen eyes were tracking their movements. She tightened the strap on her pack, forcing her breath into rhythm. In, out, one step, another. The mountain demanded silence, and silence was what they gave. The sergeant raised a fist. They froze. A sound carried on the wind, faint, brittle, human. Laughter, not theirs. The team dropped low, rifles angled, eyes scanning. She pressed her cheek to the stock, scope adjusting, searching the ridgeline. A cluster of figures appeared in the distance, small, indistinct, moving along a narrow trail. The sergeant's whisper cut the air. "We hold, we watch." The figures passed, too far for detail but close enough to remind them this place wasn't empty. It never was. She held her breath until the last shadow disappeared. Then slowly the team rose. Her chest felt tight, because she knew these encounters weren't chance. This land belonged to someone, and they were intruders. Every step deeper was an invitation for something waiting in silence. Still she moved. Because she wasn't here for them, she was here for him. By dusk, the team reached an abandoned outpost, a scar of concrete half swallowed by vines and moss. Rusted barrels lay scattered, bullet holes pocking the walls. The smell of damp earth mixed with old iron. They filed inside, careful, clearing corners. Empty, only silence remained. The sergeant signaled for rest. Packs dropped, weapons leaned. The men exhaled relief in low murmurs. She chose a corner away from the others, sitting with her back against the cold wall. The concrete pressed against her shoulders, grounding her. Her hands, though, wouldn't stay still. They fidgeted against her knees, restless. The freckled soldier, the boy, slid down across from her. His face was pale, sweat dried in streaks, eyes tired. "You don't talk much," he said softly. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Talking felt dangerous. Words made things real. He gave a nervous laugh. "Guess that makes sense. I talk too much when I'm nervous." He plucked at the strap of his vest, his hands shaking slightly. Back home, I used to fix bikes. Thought that's what I'd do forever. You know, grease under the nails, bad coffee, nothing serious. Then one day my brother signed up. Next thing I know, I'm here." She listened, silent, but his words dug into her chest, because in his story she heard echoes of herself. Her father's voice again. "One day you'll understand why I did it, why I had to go." She never understood, not then. The boy's gaze lifted. "Why'd you join?" Her throat tightened. She wanted to lie. Say the same thing others did, duty, service, country, but those weren't her reasons, not the truth. She gave him nothing, just silence. He nodded, almost expecting it. "Fair enough." The sergeant's voice broke the moment. "Lights out, quiet." Darkness swallowed the outpost. The team settled, rifles cradled like children, bodies slumped against cold stone. But she didn't sleep. Her eyes stayed open, tracing cracks in the ceiling. Every sound sharpened, the drip of water somewhere in the dark, the soft rustle of someone shifting, the hollow echo of her own breath. And beneath it all, a voice she couldn't silence. Her father's. "Never let them tell you war is numbers. It's carried in the heart of one." She closed her eyes. A single tear slipped free. She let it fall silently into the dust. Dawn broke gray and cold. Mist clung to the valley, thick and unyielding. The outpost looked even more broken in the pale light. They moved again, boots sinking into wet earth, breath steaming. The mist swallowed sound, turning their footsteps into whispers. Hours blurred. The terrain grew crueler, slopes that tore at their calves, rocks that bruised their knees, thorns that snagged their uniforms. Every step forward felt like penance. The sergeant halted suddenly, crouching low. His hand shot up, signal. They froze. From the fog ahead came faint shapes. 4, no 5, weapons slung, voices hushed. The team melted into the earth, bodies pressed low. She lay flat, heart hammering, scope fixed. The shapes drew closer, faces still obscured by mist. Her finger rested on the trigger. Her breath slowed. She thought of the boy in the rocks, the fear in his eyes. The figures passed, no more than 20 meters away. Their voices carried fragments of words, foreign but human, laced with fatigue. One of them laughed, a sound startlingly normal, startlingly young. She hesitated, and in that hesitation, something inside her cracked further. Because every face blurred into her father's, every voice echoed his. The sergeant's eyes met hers briefly. His expression was unreadable, but his nod was clear. "Hold, don't break." The figures vanished into mist. Silence returned. She exhaled slowly, chest aching. How many more times could she do this? How many more ghosts would she carry? By midday, exhaustion clawed at them. The valley gave no mercy, only stone, thorns, and silence. Their breaths were ragged, their movements slower. They paused under the shadow of a ridge, packs slung off, bodies slumping against rock. The boy sat beside her again. His face was pale, lips cracked. He whispered, "You think we'll make it?" She looked at him. His eyes were wide, searching for something, hope, reassurance, anything. She swallowed hard. "We have to." The words came out sharper than she intended. Not comfort, necessity. Because failure wasn't an option, not for her. The sergeant approached, crouching low. His gaze lingered on her. "You holding up?" She nodded once. But he didn't move away. "I've seen that look before." Her chest tightened. "What look?" "The one where the mission isn't the mission," he said quietly. "The one where it's personal." Her throat closed. Heat rushed to her face. She looked away, hiding behind silence. He didn't press, just placed a hand on her shoulder briefly, a heavy, grounding weight. Then he rose and walked away. But his words stayed. He saw through her. As evening fell, they reached the edge of the valley. The ridgeline loomed above, steep and unforgiving. The red dot on the map, their target, was somewhere beyond. Her pulse quickened, because she knew what waited. Not coordinates, not numbers. A name. Her father's. And tonight she would face it. Why did she freeze when the helicopter blades finally fell silent? The others rushed to unload, boots hitting the dirt with practiced rhythm. But she stood still, rifle strapped tight across her chest, eyes fixed on the horizon as if something out there had already seen her. Dust swirled in the orange haze of dusk, the air thick with the taste of oil, metal, and fear that didn't belong to anyone but her. She wasn't supposed to feel it, not here, not now, but it lingered, like a weight she couldn't shake. The landing zone looked ordinary, unremarkable, a patch of dirt beside a cluster of low, broken walls, yet her breath shortened. Her hand tightened on the sling. Something was wrong. Nobody noticed. Captain Rains barked orders, sharp and clipped, his voice carrying through the clatter of equipment. 2 teams, north perimeter, east sweep, stay sharp. Men moved with certainty, shoulders pressed into their routines, steps heavy with muscle memory. But she lagged, not enough to draw eyes, but enough to notice the pulse quickening inside her. Because she recognized this ground. Not from the maps, not from the briefings, from before, long before. But she swallowed it, said nothing. "Let's go." Morales, one of the younger privates, nudged her shoulder lightly, a friendly gesture, careless, oblivious. He grinned through cracked lips. "First night, easy one." She managed a thin smile, easy if only. They moved, rifles raised, shadows stretching long in the dying light. The place smelled of abandonment, burnt wood, wet stone, the faint echo of life stripped bare. She scanned corners, roof lines, doorways. Her body followed the drill. Her mind drifted elsewhere. The silence here wasn't empty. It pressed, it questioned. Her boots crunched over gravel, each step dragging the ghost of memory. Because this village they'd passed through years ago. She hadn't told anyone, she couldn't, but the walls remembered, the roads remembered, and she couldn't forget. A sudden call jolted her back. "Clear!" One of the men shouted from ahead, another echoed, a ritual of reassurance, each word bouncing across the ruins like a false promise. But her gut wouldn't quiet. She swept into an abandoned house, Morales at her side. Broken chairs, a cracked mirror, a child's shoe half buried in dust. Her throat closed. He noticed. "Hey, you good?" She forced herself to nod. "Yeah." But something inside her screamed otherwise. They regrouped near the center of the ruins. Captain Rains reviewed their positions, muttering to his radio. The team's chatter softened, some men joking to mask their nerves. She listened, half present, words dissolving against the roar of what only she could hear, echoes of another night, years gone, when these walls had sheltered her in the middle of a storm. She'd been younger then, just a recruit clutching her rifle tighter than sense. That night she'd learned that war wasn't numbers, wasn't maps. It was screams. It was hands she couldn't hold. It was the silence after. And now, standing here, surrounded by men who didn't know, she felt the ground press that memory back into her chest. The mission, though, she had to stay inside it. Rains looked around. His eyes lingered on her for a beat, not suspicion, just awareness. "You ready?" She straightened her back. "Yes, sir." He nodded once, as if testing her resolve. But then a sound, small, fragile, from somewhere deep inside the ruins. Not the wind, not stone, a sound that didn't belong. Her breath caught. The others hadn't noticed. Laughter broke among them, one man cursing about sand in his boots, another complaining about the weight of gear. But she heard it, a faint shift, a sigh. Her body tensed. "Something's there," she whispered. Rains turned, his brow furrowed. "What?" She raised her rifle, gaze fixed on a darkened doorway. Dust drifted from above, caught in the fading light. Her finger hovered near the trigger. The team stilled, silence stretching thin. Morales muttered, nervous, "Probably a rat." But she didn't move, didn't breathe. Because she remembered. The last time she heard a sound like that, it hadn't been a rat. It had been a child. And she had failed them. Her chest constricted, memory colliding with the present. If it was the same again, if another innocent was hiding inside these ruins, she wouldn't repeat history. Not again. "Hold," Rains ordered. He gestured two men forward. They crept toward the doorway, boots soft on broken stone. The tension rippled across the group like static. And in that silence she knew. This mission wasn't just another checkpoint, another sweep. This was the place that had marked her. And something, someone, still lingered in its shadow. What the others couldn't see, she carried alone, a wound that hadn't closed. And as the men edged closer to the doorway, she gripped her rifle tighter, her pulse hammering. Because she knew what was waiting wasn't just an enemy. It was her past. What if the sound wasn't danger at all, but something that would break her in a different way? The two soldiers eased toward the darkened doorway, rifles angled, breath measured. Every movement felt too loud against the silence. She couldn't peel her eyes away. Each second stretched, her mind clawing back years she'd buried. The scrape came again, softer this time, almost hesitant. She swallowed, her throat dry. Her hands trembled though the rifle remained steady. Because she remembered the night when a doorway just like this had cracked open and revealed a girl, barely 8, hair tangled, eyes wide with terror. And she had been too slow. A single breath too late. Gunfire had swallowed the child's scream. Now the memory surged through her chest as the men pushed inside. The first soldier called back, "Clear." Then, after a pause, "Wait." Her heart lurched. Rain stiffened, "Report." But there was no immediate reply, just the shuffle of boots inside. She stepped forward before she realized it, voice breaking the air. "Sir, let me." "No," Rains cut her off, his tone sharp but calm. "We hold position." She froze, jaw tight, frustration burning against her ribs. A moment later, one of the men reappeared. His face was shadowed by the dim light, his expression unreadable. He motioned with his hand. "You need to see this." The team edged closer. And there, in the corner of the ruined room, huddled against broken stone, was a boy. Thin, dust covering his face, clothes ragged, knees drawn to his chest. His eyes, huge, unblinking, latched onto them. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. One muttered, "Damn, local kid." But for her, the world stopped. Her rifle lowered instinctively, the weight of it suddenly unbearable, because that face, so young, so lost, pulled her straight back into the night she couldn't escape, the girl she couldn't save. Her chest ached. The sound of her heartbeat drowned everything else. The boy flinched at the sight of their weapons. His lips moved, whispering something too soft to catch. "Lower your guns," she said. Her voice was quiet, firm. The others hesitated. Training told them one thing, humanity another. Rain stepped in, his jaw clenched, eyes locked on the child. Then slowly he nodded. Weapons down. Metal shifted as rifles dipped. The boy's breathing eased, just slightly. She knelt, her knees pressing against the cold floor, the memory pressing harder against her chest. She removed her helmet, set it down, showed her empty hand. "It's okay," she whispered, though her voice shook. "We're not here to hurt you." The boy blinked, uncertain. His small fingers clutched a piece of fabric, dirty, torn, maybe from someone he'd lost. She felt it in her bones. Loss, fear, loneliness. The kind no one should carry, let alone a child. Her throat tightened because she knew. This was the test. Not of her aim, not of her orders, but of the part of her heart she'd locked away since that night. The boy didn't move, but his eyes flickered toward her just for a moment, searching, measuring. Morales whispered behind her, "What do we do now?" No one answered. She did. "We protect him." The words left her mouth before she could think. They hung heavy, dangerous, unspoken in their implications. Rain's gaze snapped to her, hard, calculating, but he didn't speak, not yet. The others shifted uneasily. War had no room for strays, no room for saving one when the mission risked many. But she held the boy's stare, saw herself in his trembling frame, saw every night she had swallowed to keep moving forward. And in that silence, in that broken room, she realized something terrifying. This mission wasn't just about strategy, or survival, or numbers scratched into maps. It was about whether she would finally face the ghost of her failure. Or repeat it. Outside, the wind picked up. Sand whispered through shattered glass. The world moved on as if it didn't care what choice she made. But for her, time had stopped. And deep down she knew this boy was no accident. He was the war staring back at her. He was the reason she had come here, even if she hadn't known it until now. What if protecting him meant betraying the mission? The boy's eyes wouldn't leave hers. Fragile, questioning, terrified. She wanted to reach out, but her gloves felt like barriers, her rifle like a sin she couldn't put down. Behind her, the weight of silence broke. Rain's voice cut through, steady but low. "We don't have time for this." Her chest tightened, she turned. "Sir, he's just a child." "Doesn't matter. He slows us down. We all pay the price, you know that." His tone wasn't cruel, it was calculated. Survival wrapped in discipline. But she couldn't hear it that way. Because the memory screamed louder. That girl, years ago. Small hands reaching for her before the world ripped them away. Her jaw locked. If we leave him, we'll be no better than what we're fighting. The team shifted uneasily, eyes darting between them. Morale scratched the back of his neck, whispering, "She's right, sir. Look at him." Rain's gaze flicked toward Morale's, sharp enough to shut him down. But then he looked back at her, longer this time, measuring, testing. Finally, he sighed. "You want him alive, then he's your responsibility, but if it jeopardizes this mission—" "I'll carry that weight," she interrupted, sharper than she meant. Her pulse hammered. The boy flinched at her raised voice. She softened instantly. "I'll carry it," she repeated, quieter for the child as much as the captain. Rain studied her another moment, then gave a clipped nod. "Fine, but don't make me regret this." The others exhaled, tension leaking into the ruined air. She turned back, crouching lower. Removing one glove, she extended her bare hand. Skin to skin, human to human. The boy hesitated. Then slowly, he placed his small, trembling fingers in hers. The contact shattered something inside her, and mended something else. She helped him to his feet, the fabric he clutched still pressed to his chest. Up close, she could see the dirt lining his face, the hollows beneath his eyes. Hunger, exhaustion, but also life. "Stay with me," she whispered. As they moved out of the ruined house, whispers passed between the men. Some sympathetic, some doubtful, but no one dared speak aloud, not with the weight of her decision hanging in the air. The patrol resumed, every sound sharper now, every shadow heavier. The boy clung to her side, silent, steps faltering but determined. She carried more than her rifle now, she carried him. And with each step, the memory of failure loosened its grip, just enough. But war is cruel in its timing. Barely half an hour into the sweep, as night deepened and stars crawled out from the desert's edge, the radio hissed. A voice crackled through, urgent, clipped. "Movement. Perimeter compromised. Possible contact inbound." The men tensed instantly, rifles rising, eyes sweeping. Her hand instinctively pulled the boy closer. His breath quickened, shallow, frightened. Rains barked orders, positioning men into cover, scanning arcs. His voice was steel. "Stay sharp, no mistakes." She crouched with the boy, her pulse drumming against her skull. Shadows shifted along the far ridge. Too far to confirm, too close to ignore. The boy clutched her sleeve, whispering something in his language, words she didn't understand, but she knew what they meant. "Don't leave me." She pressed her hand over his. "I won't." For the first time in years, she meant it. But as the shapes on the ridge solidified, and the first sparks of enemy fire cracked across the night, she realized the truth. Keeping her promise might mean breaking everything else. What happens when the first shot is meant for someone you swore to protect? The ridge lit up with muzzle flashes, sharp streaks cutting the dark. Bullets hissed into the stone walls around them, splinters showering the air. The boy clamped his hands over his ears, eyes wide, his body shaking against her side. She dropped low, pulling him tight into the hollow of a broken wall. Her rifle snapped into her shoulder almost by instinct, sight catching on the dark shapes darting across the ridge. Rain's voice roared above the chaos. "Return fire, hold your ground." The team lit up the night, disciplined bursts cutting back against the shadows. Dust and thunder merged into one relentless storm. But for her, the world split in two. One half the mission, fire, movement, survival. The other, the boy trembling against her, silent tears streaking dirt across his face. She couldn't let him freeze, couldn't let him be another ghost. "Stay down," she whispered, softer than the storm around them. "Don't move, I'll be right here." A bullet sparked against stone inches from her helmet. She flinched, heart hammering, then leaned out and fired. 2 rounds measured, controlled. One target fell, the other scattered. Morales dropped in beside her, his face pale under the flicker of gunfire. "We can't hold here long." Rain's orders cracked through the comms, calm but edged with urgency. "We fall back to secondary cover, 2 by 2, move." One by one, the men peeled off, covering each other in waves. The formation worked like clockwork, years of drilled discipline. Except her. Because she couldn't move in twos, she couldn't leave him behind. Morales shouted, "Your turn, go." She glanced down. The boy clutched her sleeve with a grip that felt like iron, terrified, immovable. If she pulled away, she'd break him. If she carried him, she'd slow them both. The decision burned. Then she saw it, enemy shapes breaking from the ridge, closing the distance, firing as they ran. Seconds to act. She scooped the boy into her arms. Weight shifted against her chest, awkward, heavy. But it didn't matter. She ran, bullets snapping past, feet pounding against broken ground. Every step felt too slow, every breath a battle. Morales covered her, shouting, firing wildly to keep the enemy heads down. She didn't look back. Couldn't. The boy buried his face against her neck, muffling his sobs in the heat of her uniform. They dove into the next cover point, bodies crashing into the dirt. Her lungs screamed. Her arms ached. But the boy was alive, still clinging. Rains landed beside her, grabbing her shoulder. His eyes burned into hers. "You can't carry him and fight." Her voice broke through grit and gasps. "Then I'll die carrying him." Rains froze for half a second, just long enough for her words to register, to cut deeper than gunfire. He didn't argue. He just turned back to the fight, barking orders louder, sharper, maybe to drown the weight of what she had said. The battle dragged on. Shadows pressed closer, fire pouring down. The men fought hard, but their line thinned. Each second stretched tighter, like glass ready to shatter. And still she shielded the boy, her rifle clutched in one hand, firing when she could, protecting him when she couldn't. War had turned into something else entirely. Not numbers, not strategy, not even survival. Just a promise carved into her bones. And as the night bled with fire and echoes, she realized something chilling. This wasn't the final fight. This was only the beginning. What if the end of the mission wasn't written in bullets, but in silence? The gunfire tapered, one exchange at a time, until the desert swallowed the sound. Smoke clung to the air, drifting like ghosts over broken stone. The team crouched low, scanning the horizon, weapons still trembling with heat. The boy didn't move. He was curled into her chest, arms locked around her like chains of fear. His heartbeat rattled against her ribs, too fast, too fragile. She looked at him, then at the men. Every face carried exhaustion, fear, and something deeper, doubt. Rain stood in the half-light, his shoulders squared, his radio pressed tight. Static hissed back at him. No reinforcements, no easy escape, just the desert night. He turned, his eyes finding hers. "We can't stay, we move north now." Her voice cracked against the weight of it. "With him." Rain's jaw flexed, his silence louder than a refusal. The team waited. Some stared at the boy, others at her. Morales wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. He just kept his rifle low, his breath ragged. Finally, Rain spoke. His voice carried no anger, only truth. "You know what bringing him means: more weight, slower pace, more eyes on us. He could cost us everything." Her throat closed, but her words still came. "If we leave him, it will cost us more." The silence that followed was heavy, not just with risk, with morality, with memory. Because every man there knew, one day someone had left their own behind. Maybe a comrade, maybe a child. War always demanded abandonment. But not tonight. She stood, adjusting the boy in her arms, ignoring the burn in her muscles. "I'll take that burden, alone if I have to." No one stopped her, no one helped either. Until Morales rose quietly, moving to her side. His whisper cut through the dark. "You won't do it alone." The choice rippled. Another soldier shifted, then another. Not agreement, not rebellion, just men caught between orders and conscience. Rains closed his eyes for a moment, as if weighing not the mission but his own humanity. When he opened them, the steel was gone. What remained was something older, wearier. "Fine," he muttered, "but don't mistake mercy for victory. War doesn't forgive." They moved, slow, careful. The boy nestled against her, half asleep from exhaustion, his small hand still clutching her sleeve as if letting go meant death. The night stretched endlessly. Stars cold above, sand whispering under boots. The silence grew heavy, filled not with fear of being hunted, but with the awareness that choices leave scars deeper than wounds. Hours later, when dawn cracked the horizon in thin lines of gold, the team reached safer ground. Temporary safety. Nothing permanent, nothing guaranteed. The boy stirred, his voice faint, whispering a word she didn't understand. But she knew its meaning: gratitude, fragile hope. Her knees buckled as she set him down, her arms numb from carrying more than his weight. She touched his face gently, brushing dirt from his cheek. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel the ache she'd buried, the failure that had haunted her, the silence of a child she couldn't save. Now there was breath, there was life. It didn't erase the past, nothing ever could. But it proved something she had almost forgotten, that dignity doesn't shout. It doesn't march in numbers. It doesn't carve its name into stone. Sometimes dignity is a single act, quiet, costly, undeniable. And as the sun rose, painting the desert in fire and light, she sat in silence. Not triumphant, not broken. Just human. And the war, for once, didn't feel like numbers. It felt like the heartbeat of one.